Hello, everyone. My guest wanted me to play this for you guys today before we get started, so here we goes.
This is an addendum for the introduction. I just want to let people know that I'm still young, less than 40. I'm not prone to any health conditions like heart attacks or anything like that. I'm happy and I'm not suicidal at all. So if the government tries to report anything about some Asian American staff who is known to be pro 2A and a conspiracy theorist, no, it's likely not whatever accident they're cooking up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Miller Talk podcast. Today we're talking to RG, who I met on X. You want to say hi, RG, and tell us what you want to talk about today?
Everyone, yeah, we were going to be talking about, I guess, sort of like what we initially discussed on X a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
To recap on that is we talked about the Second Amendment, we talked about tyranny and gun or arm control laws, and if the government is kind of salvageable through peaceful means or if a civil war is necessary, what is the cost of that and is it worth it? And we also just brought up a bunch of founding father quotes, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a pretty good discussion we had. It seemed like we were disagreeing a little bit, but I was just trying to give you some pushback. Uh,
Were you just playing devil's advocate, or do you actually agree and are just playing devil's advocate, or do you like
I
legitimately disagree for?
I like don't fully disagree with you, but
Okay.
um, I was a little bit playing devil's advocate, and some of it was my beliefs. So
Mhm. Okay. Besides that, I do want to just kind of give a little bit self introduction.
yeah,
So I am an American. I'm a advocate for the Second Amendment. If that wasn't obvious enough, um, I do like to talk about a lot of controversial topics, not just about the Second Amendment. I grew up
mm-hmm.
in a blue state. I used to vote Democrat down the line based off of things that I heard from the media. I did my own research, started voting conservative, dug deeper, and realized that both sides are kind of terrible. They're nothing really like how our founding fathers were. And if
Mm-hmm.
people can call me conspiracy theorist, but I think they're in all likelihood kind of like a two sides of a uni party playing the people to concentrate money and power into themselves away from the people with no real regard for their well-being outside of being a taxable livestock.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at.
Okay.
Uh, I grew up in a red state, not a blue state, but when I was in high school, and really up until Donald Trump ran for president, I really wasn't involved in politics at all. Mostly because I was in high school. I graduated the year Trump was elected, so in 2016. So before that, I really didn't have a need to be into politics because I was a child. But
Mhm.
I really didn't have opinions on anything except for the Second Amendment. Of course, just being an American, I just thought it was the most American thing. And I've always been USA, like, but I never had like a political affiliation. It was just always I love America,
Mhm.
like a patriot and everything. So once I started diving into it, though, and not just having talks about the Second Amendment, I did start realizing the things that you did.
So that's kind of interesting because my viewpoint, or at least even just when I started, it wasn't really so much about like the Second Amendment is like an American thing, because the way that I read the Declaration of Independence, mind you, America wasn't even a country yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's basically was speaking about kind of like how every human has these rights, right? And it's not just like America was the only country that has ever rebelled against their like parent country before. There are several other
Mm-hmm.
instances where countries people have rebelled, like there's famous French rebellions,
Yep.
and there's I'm pretty sure there's a whole bunch of rebellions happening in third world countries that we don't even get to hear about in the media
Mm-hmm.
because they just for a long time didn't have like widespread news all over the nation or everything all over the
Yeah.
globe. So like I'm pretty sure like it's not just an American ideal to for people to have such liberties, such as like just the right to keep and bear arms and to fight on your own behalf to make sure that you're getting a fair shake on life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
Okay.
did your viewpoints change as you got into politics per se, or did they kind of stay the same, but you kind of shifted from being like a Democrat or identifying that way?
I would say I definitely got like more active about it. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
be more talkative with other people when I became like more like I started leaning conservative and stuff.
Yeah.
Like at first I didn't think like I didn't just like everybody else, right? Like you're young, you don't do a lot of research and stuff. So I just thought for the part of like the reason why I supported Democrats, I guess I should explain in the beginning is like I'm a high school senior or college freshman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm in the position where people are kind of like trying to benefit off the system. So when Democrats tell you, "Hey, we're going to make college free" or whatever, like that sounds really good to you, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't until later where I'm like, hey, I'm working, I'm paying taxes. Like even like in high school, I was working a part-time job in high school, uh, but in college too, like I'm working, I'm paying taxes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, wait, what do you mean like free? Like, and then later I just start going down like the logical conclusions, just like, well, nothing's actually really free. Like teachers need a salary and everything. Books
Yeah.
come from somewhere. Somebody has to print it, pay for the books, and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, where's that money coming from? Like, well, so people are still essentially paying for that. It's just like maybe the student themselves or their family is not paying for it because other taxpayers are paying for it. So if you're like too poor to afford college, maybe that helps you.
Yeah.
Uh, and for a little bit of other background, like fortunately for me, my family wasn't in that position, even though my family was they are immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they actually pretty much came over to the country with pretty much nothing, at least on my dad's side. He came. I'm Asian, so uh, they came off like the from the communist country in Vietnam and
Oh.
China. So they had to escape by boat. The communists were kind of coming after them, their property, everything. They had to sneak out in the middle of the night and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they literally came here like broke. They didn't have
Yeah.
anything. So it was just through straight up hard work. They had to learn the language. They even know English over there. It's not like now where English is widespread second
Mm-hmm.
language over in other countries. It wasn't like that then. So yeah, that's kind of where I was coming from.
All right. And your parents? So was it your parents that came over first, or was it your grandparents? Like, are you first generation or?
Yeah, my parents. Well, they kind of came over at the same time, like the parents and
Yeah.
grandparents. So, yeah, they came as a bundle,
Mm-hmm.
and then so yeah, I'm first generation, like born into America.
Okay. Wow. So it's really not like that long ago. Like if it was your grandparents, it could be like
Hmm.
60, 70 years ago. That sounds like it's pretty recent. Uh,
Yeah, like I don't think people realize like just how recently
mm-hmm.
certain conflicts around the world have happened, like the Vietnam War and World War II. Like people, some people are still alive from World War II. So,
Yeah.
or at least I think it was. Maybe it was like the last veteran died not too long ago. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
But I
But
mean, people
it
who've
wasn't
experienced it
that
as
long
children and
ago,
stuff
right?
still around.
Like 80 years ago or something. It's just right around the end of World War II. So it wasn't that long ago. It's still
Mm-hmm.
living history of today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's why I love this country is people who are trying to escape all these awful places. There is a beacon of hope in the world, you know.
Hmm. And I do, and this is why I kind of like the Declaration of Independence so much. I
Mm-hmm.
really do hope for those other countries
Yeah.
that it's not just like come here is a beacon of hope, but the ideology itself that other people can look at it as an example and be like, we can be free here too, wherever that is,
Yeah.
and they go and and try to free themselves. And I think even like a country like Canada, our neighbors to the north, like they kind of did that. They followed slightly after the U.S. was formed. They're like, hey, look, they can be free. We don't actually really have to completely conform or follow everything in the British government, and they got independence. I don't know how many years later, but it was
Hmm.
not that too long after. Um, so that's sort of why I like America and why it's like just why I harp on the Declaration of Independence so much because it's not America is not just like a piece of land. It really is like an ideal or an
Hmm.
idea. So there was one of the favorite quotes that you talked about from the founding fathers. I kind of wanted to like revisit, which was
All right.
the tree of liberty must be
Hmm.
refreshed with the from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants.
Yeah.
Um, I think that one is so important to like kind of show the mindset of where the founding fathers were at
Yeah.
when the country was being built and where the Second Amendment was being written. That was still like even though they won, it was still on their minds. Like, okay, well, how do we kind of ensure that doesn't happen again? Um, and why it also connected with there was a bunch of other quotes that I was bringing in about like why rebellion should happen
Hmm.
kind of often.
Yes.
And keep in mind when I say that, um, it's not so much that like I'm not talking about like another revolutionary war when I say
Hmm.
like armed rebellion, right?
Yeah.
Which it seemed like you were kind of when you were playing devil's advocate and stuff. It seemed like that's what you were saying, which was oh we shouldn't have another like civil war, at least
Hmm.
not right now. And I'm saying like we wouldn't just be jumping to civil war. I'm saying there should be armed rebellions in kind of more like local areas, like just states and stuff. Like one of the ones that we had really early on in history of the country was like the whiskey rebellion, right? Like it wasn't just a civil war immediately because they
Yeah.
had some taxes and stuff in a state in Kentucky. It was, but it wasn't just like oh, okay, everybody just jump in and have the whole country explode. Like no,
Hmm.
that wasn't the point. Um, but people should kind of have that um, like air of rebellion or like they're not just gonna be content and show like whoever's in politics, all our politicians, like you can't just get away with doing stuff and like whatever you want that is
Hmm.
especially hurtful to the people and when they do that on a smaller local level, it's much harder for it to get to the point where we have it on a federal level.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's important to have those smaller ones. And it seems like we're not really having those, and that's why I said that we should be having those. And it wasn't just like I was saying that based off of my own opinion, but trying to like look at history and the arguments of the founding father and use that as a basis of why is it important. It's not just me saying, but history has shown us it's important to do that.
Yeah. Kind of. Not so much that we need to just every once in a while and storm our capital and just start shooting people, but more that people need to be gathering and showing force upon the government and showing them like if things are not going well that things need to change by
I'm not
force.
even saying like go out like you said it's not even just about like going out and shooting people. Like it could just be like a show of force with arms, like you're just
Mm-hmm.
there with your guns, that's it. And I feel, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that some of the more recent rebellions were actually sort of like that, and the government did stand down and kind of leave, let the people have whatever they were kind of complaining about or like, I think it was the where is it? I'm looking at a wiki right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the Bundy standoff, where it was like a land management thing, and there was, I think, several dozen, if not like 100 or 200 or something, like federal people, armed federal people, government agents over there, and I
Mm-hmm.
think they all just like stood down and no one shot each other. But the
Yeah.
point is like, but yeah, like the point was just show the government that they're kind of angry and that things aren't right for them, and that way, it's kind of like, oh, sorry, I have an alarm going off. But it just kind of shows them like what the people are really willing to tolerate. It's just another form of voting in
Mm-hmm.
my like if you think about it, it's just happening more in real time. Uh, and it's kind of just saying like, hey, we disapprove. We're not going to wait till there's a voting election going on. Like we're just telling you we disapprove now. Like we don't like
Yeah.
whatever the government's doing. Uh, Oh, besides your favorite quote, I wanted to share you mine since I didn't do that earlier on X. But one of my favorite quotes from the founding father is actually from a probably less well-known founding father. His name is Tench Cox. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's Tenchcoxe.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a delegate from Pennsylvania, and he wrote in the Pennsylvania Gazette, he wrote, "The power of the sword, save the minority, is in the hands of Congress. My friends and countrymen, it is not so. For the powers of the sword are in the hands of the yeomanry of America from 16 to 60. The militia of these free commonwealths, entitled and accustomed to their arms, when compared with any possible army, must be tremendous and irresistible. Who are the militia? Are they not ourselves? Is it feared, then, that we shall turn our arms each man against his own bosom? Congress has no power to determine to disarm the militia. Their sword and every terrible implement of the soldier are the birthright of Americans." And he wrote that in uh, February 20th, 1788. And the reason why that's my favorite quote is because it does a few things. It defines who the militia is, which is ourselves or the yeomanry.
Mm-hmm.
The common men who work the lands. We can modernize that to include women and maybe even like trans people if people believe in the trans ideology. Uh, the second thing it does is it specifies who has the right to keep bear arms. They say it's the yeomanry Americans. I don't particularly like that they said 16 to 60 because even people who are older than 60
Mm-hmm.
retain their right to keep bear arms, right?
Yeah.
Um, it also specified that oh, and also historically, even people who were younger than that, like 10 or even like 8-year-olds, like their parents would, give them a gun
Mm-hmm.
and maybe
Yeah.
not like give it to them to own it and keep it on their own, but like they would be like, here, like learn how to shoot it. I'll be right next to you and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then third, it specifies what arms the people have a right to keep bear arms, which they say every terrible implement of the soldiers, which I pretty much interpret as like all of them, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it it also fourth it clarifies what kind of right the people what the right to keep bear arms is. It's a birthright. So it's not just like, oh, it's a right that the government just willing like gives people or
Yeah.
grants them. It's like a some people say like it's God given, it's birthright, it's a natural right, whatever you want to call it. But like as soon as you're born, like here you go, right? You can't give
Mm-hmm.
a fetus in
I'm
the womb a gun. But
Yeah, I interpret it as like as soon as, life begins, that that person is owed those rights. I don't believe it to be at birth. I believe them to be natural rights or God given. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, the reason why like you say that is because like you can't give a fetus in the womb a gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
like other things like oh the right to life, like they're owed that. I agree that
Yeah.
with that, right? Like that makes sense. A fetus, it's alive, it's growing, it's
Mm-hmm.
multiplying its cells and forming all its body parts and stuff. So right, like that, like I have no qualms with that, saying that's a human right, or once you're
Yeah.
alive, like you have that right rather than
Everyone
being
has
a
the right
birthright.
to life and
Yeah.
liberty and pursuit of happiness. So
Mhm. And then the another thing that that quote does is it also specifies what kind of power the government has to regulate arms or disarm the people in any sort of way, which it just says no power at all, um,
Yep.
which is
Hmm.
yeah pretty straightforward. And the reason why I say like disarm even a little bit is because the definition some people don't know is that the definition of disarm is to like remove. It doesn't mean to remove all arms of another person or group. It means to reduce their arms. So
Hmm.
you could theoretically, right, you could remove somebody's fully automatic rifle and leave them with their pistol or combat knife, and they would still be considered disarmed.
Yeah.
And the government has no power to do such a thing,
Nope.
at least according to that founding father.
Yeah, because I mean, it doesn't sound like you served in the military, but they have a rule of like a coat of arms where you should never be outgunned. So you always should have a step above or the equal same amount of firepower that your enemy has, where you're
Mm-hmm.
underhanded. So we, the people,
Yeah, like
cannot be
call for backup
suspended from
essentially.
owning anything that the government says that they can own. If they can own it, we can
Mm-hmm.
own it. If you can't own it, then we can't own it. But
Yeah, and the other thing is like it's not just uh like our own government, right? Like if
mm-hmm,
a foreign government has it and they're like, "Oh, we're threatening to invade you," uh, and their military has fully automatic weapons, and just for the sake of argument, like our own government didn't have fully automatic weapons; they all just had semi-automatic weapons. Like just because we got rid of a sort of like domestic tyrannical threat doesn't mean foreign tyrannical threats don't exist and that we
mm-hmm,
should be like less armed than them.
yeah,
Otherwise, we run the risk of just getting invaded and taken over.
mm-hmm. It's about
So yeah, I
the
agree with that principle, not just on the military, but for citizens as well.
mm-hmm. It's about the defense of the individual and also the defense of your community, the defense of your state, and the defense of the whole country. At the end
Hmm.
of the day, the Second Amendment should not only be argued for, oh, I need to defend myself. You know, at some point, we may or may not have to defend a foreign invader. So, probably very less likely to happen, but it could. So, we need to be prepared for that.
Hmm. I think with like some people will say like, oh, we're already kind of being invaded, like from
Mm-hmm.
Mexico and whatever,
Yeah.
but it's just not declared as war or anything like that.
Yeah.
Uh, I think people should kind of like defend themselves at that point from that. I'm not saying like go around and shoot like Mexicans or anything, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Uh, but like I don't know, like people should take a stand and then show like how they
Mm-hmm.
should be allowed to show like how unhappy they are with the way that things are in their country. And if some people there's so many people that I hear all the time that complain about how the United States is and that they support other countries.
Yep.
And realistically, I'm like, well, it's a free country. If you want to leave, like, go ahead.
Yeah.
Although I don't know how, I can't really say too much for the other countries that they're, showing support for. It's like I don't know how open their boards are if they just let you fly in there and just move there if you want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Most places have a
But
very, um,
strict immigration policy.
yeah, usually takes a while. A lot of places like Germany, you have to have like $10,000 or $15,000 saved in your bank account, and you have to prove
Hmm.
that you can do this job and that you already like received the job and stuff like that.
That's one of the things that always confuses me about immigration policy. That like you receive the job, usually they also require you to have like some kind of work permit,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's kind of like circular. Like the work permit will tell you that oh you should have gotten a job offer, but the companies can't really give you a job offer unless you are legally allowed to work, which requires the work permit in the first place. So I'm like, okay, how do you get the job offer if you don't have the work
Mm-hmm.
permit? And to get the work permit, you need the job offer. Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't. I feel like the countries just really don't want immigrants to come in there and take their jobs,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah.
fine. Like give all your jobs to your local people first, like they
Yeah.
should.
Any
Doesn't make
country
too much
should.
sense to like outsource your work to other people, especially to
Mm-hmm.
have them fly over there. That's even makes even less sense.
Yeah. I believe
Uh,
that America's immigration policy should be firm, but not terribly hard. Like it shouldn't be.
do you think it needs to be firmer than it is now? Like, I think the legal amount of people we let in right now is like a million a year or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm talking currently right now, I feel like we should be shutting all immigration off while we sort this problem out. But realistically, I don't know much about immigration policy in America, so I can't really
Okay,
tell
so
you
just
if I think it
yeah.
should be more laxed or more firm.
Yeah, so your position is pretty similar from what I've heard with like Charlie Kirk, where he's just like, just put a pause on immigration for right now,
Mm-hmm.
and then deal with. We do have a lot of like illegal immigrants, and also just the immigrants we do like legal immigrants as well that we do have is quite a lot, and
Yeah.
I don't. I also agree. Like, I don't believe our country has had the appropriate amount of time to kind of like get people to like acclimate to our country, understand our deals and all this stuff. Like, I know they have the uh, kind of like immigration tests and stuff like that. But I mean, people can just say whatever answers they think the government wants to hear to let them through the door, right?
Yeah.
Um, but once people really start living in it and understanding like what our culture is like and living in it for a bit, I think that will help get things in. And for at least the most part, I feel like I've seen a lot of interviews with like online interviews with people, especially immigrants who are pretty happy to be in the country and
Mm-hmm.
for more or less part do share American ideals. And that's kind of a hard thing to say what American ideals even are
Yeah.
because of like the whole idea of just being absolutely free anyways and having
Mm-hmm.
uh, the freedom to express all your opinions and ideas. So there's not too much unity. I feel like the country does need to refocus on core values that America has, and that's why one of the things I do focus on are all the controversial things. Like, that's first and foremost. We got to bring those things in line so that we can have a more cohesive
Mm-hmm.
country.
Yep.
Like, if everything's divided, that's not really that great, right?
Nope. Benjamin Franklin's one of my favorite founding fathers. Mostly just because I feel like we'd be like really good friends. But he said something. There was the. It was either after the revolution or coming up. No, it was after the revolution. Um, and he did this comic, or not comic, but like a political cartoon. It was the snake that's divided, and it had the 13 different uh, parts of it. Uh, and it, because the country was becoming so divided, and he was saying that if we stay divided, we'll never, uh, you know, together we're strong, but divided we're weak. So
Hmm.
I think it was at a
Yeah.
time when people were really kind of arguing like what the federal power should hold and what the states should hold, and then the states were kind of having their different ideas on things. Like even, yeah, I mean, it happens now, and so everyone was just kind of fighting with each other. And he was like, "Dude, we need to come together and quit all this arguing and at least figure out something to get along with."
Hmm. I think for me that's one of the reasons why I don't like a lot of the uh like different right groups
Mm-hmm.
like feminist like the feminist ideology or like the LGBTQ, like not like the community as the people, but like them just trying to be like, we
Yeah.
want rights selfishly
Mm-hmm.
just for ourselves. And I think
Mm-hmm.
people need to refocus on like, okay, well, what can everybody have as like rights or benefits as a group that we need to really look at. And that's why I like egalitarianism as a like a thing, like as an ideology or
Yeah.
ism rather than all those other things, because it's basically if you would think of Fez as something for equality, it's basically the same thing where it's equality, but without all the like gender or sex, race
Yeah.
war stuff, like all that kind of stuff. Uh, but it's just a pure form of equality, at least in my
Mm-hmm.
like that's how I see it.
Yeah, you can almost guarantee equality of opportunity, but something you will never be able to guarantee is equality of
Equality of
outcome.
outcome. Yeah,
So I believe in
and
giving everyone the same chance. Like I'm a Christian, so a lot of people get on me, but like I don't really care about the LGBT community as long as it they stay away from kids and stuff and it's just adults doing adult things. That's fine. I don't really care. Go over there and do what you want. But like you said, when we get start talking about LGBT rights, it's like, well, what rights are you not being afforded? They can never answer that. You know, they say this or that. Well, that's not a right. That's not a right. Like
mm-hmm.
the only people that consistently are trying to take away rights is the left when they try to take away our Second Amendment every time a mass shooting happens. No
Mm-hmm.
one's rights in America, I feel like, are being stomped on because of their. I mean, it's going to happen. You know, it probably does in small microcosms, but for the most part, everyone here is afforded rights based on the fact that they're a person, not that they're gay, not that they're black or white or Asian. Everyone here is afforded rights by the fact that they're a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. There's only just like when people like in our government, it's just like when people become criminals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's when our government's like, okay, well, you have kind of like
Oh yeah.
misused your right, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you want to phrase that, but at that point, we kind of like
Yeah.
I wouldn't really say take it away because again, that is kind of the whole thing about like rights are kind of an inalienable thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of more like you're not really allowed to be like freely exercise those rights in
Yes.
our country. Like if you want
Mm-hmm.
to go do that somewhere else, like you should leave our country and then
Yeah.
go try to do that somewhere else. Which is why people are like you get in prison, you get exiled, or if it's so bad, right, then like, you get executed. Um, maybe they can exercise their rights in the afterlife. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
The only way to actually take my rights away is to kill me. Other than that, you're just saying it's illegal for me to express my rights.
hmm
So, no matter what laws you make, it doesn't matter. I could still do that thing. You know, you can say it's illegal to wear blue shoes. Well, I can still put the blue shoes on. It just matters if someone sees me with those blue shoes on and tells someone that I'm
yeah,
wearing illegal blue shoes. So, you can't
and
physically stop a person from doing something they want to do.
and that's kind of like where it's like people will say it's like semantics or whatever, but I think that semantics are important, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people have kind of like I feel like a lot of people haven't picked up a damn dictionary in quite a while. Uh,
Yeah.
like, and it's crazy because like we have Google and whatever at our fingertips, right, on our phones and everything, and people
Yep.
just don't know definitions of a lot of words. People throw on like buzzwords and like, do you even
Mm-hmm.
know what that means? Like the context you're using is it doesn't make any sense like for the word that it is, and people are like, oh, this person's like a Nazi or this person's like a
Mm-hmm.
communist and whatever. Or,
Yep.
like they'll start throwing all these buzzwords around. It's like they're kind of just like overusing the word to the point that's just like the
Yep.
meaning just sounds like you don't like the person. Like that's not
Mm-hmm.
what the word really means.
It's just an insult at
So
now.
yeah, or things with like the trans community, which I will bring up this probably more later. I do still want to talk more about the second minute, but just briefly, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
their whole ideology with like men can be women and women can be men, and then they give you the definition of like a man is whatever whoever identifies as a man, and a woman is whoever identifies as woman. But then like that's just a circular definition and all
Yep.
that kind of stuff. So it's just like, well, like what are like you need a concrete definition of like what are you identifying as, because what is that thing that you're identifying as, like that part doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting because then you could ask those people like what a trans woman is, and they could be more concrete and tell you, oh, that is a biological uh man that transitioned into a woman. They will say it that they could phrase it that way.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's interesting that they'll like define those more clearly than if you just ask what is a woman. uh, yeah. Um, oh, one of the points that I wanted to ask you on, by the way, was
Hmm.
your so you mentioned on X that you thought that the turning point of America when it started going downwards was in 1913. I
Yep.
said that it was after the NFA the government implemented the NFA of
Yeah.
1934. Could you kind of like tell me why you think that why it started in 1913? Like what was the thing that caused it at that time point?
That's when the Federal Reserve was created, and that's when we switched from the gold standard to having a fiat currency. And so a fiat currency is just a currency that is backed by literally nothing. Before, every US dollar was backed by gold. Now it's backed by literally nothing. So we can print as much as we want, um, whenever we want. And
Okay,
that's
yeah,
about the time that
I do
progressive
agree with that.
ideals started taking root in America.
Mhm. I actually agree with that. And and I think that is actually the first thing that the government did that was unconstitutional. I believe
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the things in the Constitution basically says that the government is not supposed to basically use anything other than gold and silver as money.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Even if you wanted to like say back some like a dollar bill with it, at least you had to back it up with gold and silver.
Yeah.
But yeah, now they're not doing that. So yeah, I would say that is where the government first went off the hinges and stopped doing what they're supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why we have inflation and
Yep.
such.
I will agree with you on the NFA. That was one of the biggest mess ups.
The reason why I pointed that one, that was like that's more like a civil rights thing that
Yeah.
they're doing wrong to the people,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the country's just doing bad like financially. Like at least like everybody's more or less at the time was in the same boat, but now it's more like wealth has concentrated into a few people's hands so much that's like okay, well now it's not really fair for everybody that we're all in the same boat. Like you guys are screwing everyone over.
Yep.
Mm. Oh, one other thing that I saw when I was looking at your X profile before, like just kind of like to see what was going on before we had a chat,
Yep.
is you said that like all gun laws are unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's just gun laws, or because the way that I read the Second Amendment, it's like all arms, so it's like
Mm-hmm.
anything like knives or
Yep.
whatever, or like rocket launchers and stuff. Like it's not just guns, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it could be simplified to arms, but a majority of the time in current, like our, like the zeitgeist or whatever, it's like gun control is what people are pushing for, which will lead
Right.
down
Because
to, you
which
know,
makes sense because they already got like they already pretty much banned people from having, or at least heavily regulated people from getting like tanks and stuff, right?
mm-hmm, you can own tanks, but they have to be disarmed. And to get an armed one, you have to go through a lot of red
It
tape and everything.
depends which state you're in. Yeah, it depends which state you're in. Some of them do allow you to have a tank that has, like you said, the functioning cannon on it.
Mm-hmm.
But some states, like the blue state that I grew up in, they just outright like completely ban you. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if it doesn't have a dysfunctional cannon. They're just like, no, you can't have an armored tank vehicle with a cannon thing on it because they're like, oh, you'll like modify and like open up the barrel or something and make it refunctional again. So they're just like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't have it at all.
Yeah. Yep. They saw that
So
coming.
interesting question. Like I want to push this to like the maximum conclusion because some people like they will say this. Like I've had people like push back on me when I mention nukes. Do you think like people should have nukes?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I
Uh,
pretty much,
my yeah.
yeah.
So my reasoning for it was basically like so if the federal government can have nuclear weapons, and then like states should also have nuclear weapons because
Mm-hmm.
what if the federal government's like, hey, Texas or whatever, you're refusing to pay a federal tax. We're gonna nuke you if you don't, you know, pay the federal tax or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they like start increasing the tax just on Texas alone because of whatever reason, right? Because there are administrations that target certain people or political ideologies, and
Yeah.
states are no exception, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're just like, hey, we want to nuke you, it's fine. We have the other 49 states we can collect taxes off of, but they're like, we're going to nuke you. I think that that state should be able to have their own nukes and defend themselves
Yeah.
from like kind of being strong armed into doing stuff they don't want to do, especially when they're unconstitutional and stuff. And then for cities and towns, like I think they should have the same thing too. Because if states have them,
Mm-hmm.
right, they might do the same thing with cities or towns and be like, hey, like you don't pay this state tax or whatever, we're gonna nuke this one city. And they're like, oh well, we have other cities and towns to collect tax out, where it's fine. But if cities and towns have them, usually nuclear weapons are big enough that like encompasses the whole thing. So I'm not too worried about them like blowing themselves up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people that think like the main reason why I get like pushback on it I hear is they're like, oh, why would you want like random Joe Schmo individual to have a nuke? I'm like, well, like I don't know why you're scared of that because like as far as I know, like unless you're thinking about like Elon Musk or somebody, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
nobody individually has the money to go buy a nuke.
Yeah.
Like
There's not going to be
I don't care if
rednecks running around the Appalachian Mountains with
yeah,
nukes.
unless you're probably like playing, I don't know, Fallout Shelter, and you get the little baby nuke gun
Yeah.
that only destroys a small street, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of anybody having nukes. And like the technology doesn't really exist to have such small nuclear weapons, and nobody can afford it. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, no one seems to be really terrified of like Elon Musk or the government NASA having like space rockets that can go out anywhere on the planet, not just
Yep.
like the neighboring country or whatever, and like land on somebody. So I'm like, if you're not afraid of like like mostly a privatized citizen like Elon Musk having access to space rockets that can just go and shoot it at
Mm-hmm.
some enemy country and starting a war or landing it on our own country and killing civilians. Like I don't know why people seem to care or why they're scared of like anybody else owning nuclear weapons and doing or anything that can launch and do the same.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if you've ever had the conversation where people like try to break down the Second Amendment like linguistically, but I try to
Uh,
do that quite often because, like I said, semantics is quite important,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of people, if you've gone into the second arguments quite a bit, a lot of people that are on like the Democrat progressive side like to just point at two or three words and just say well regulated or well regulated
Mm-hmm.
militia. And then some of the people who are on the pro 2A side will just say shall not be infringed, and that's it. Like right, they don't look at the whole entire thing and
Yeah.
read everything else. So I actually like to break down the whole thing for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people. Uh, and so there's like the four segments, right? Everybody knows the first one with the whole well-regulated militia thing, and then everyone knows the last segment, which shall not be infringed. But the third, the second and third segments usually don't get mentioned that much.
Yeah.
Maybe the third one gets mentioned, saying like the right of the people, right? But
Mm-hmm.
no, I've literally never heard anyone mention the second one, unless they're just quoting the whole thing. But then they don't point at it to say anything,
Mm-hmm.
to discuss it. So the way I like to describe how the four segments interact with each other. So the second segment, the being necessary to the security of the free state part, connects to the first part, the well-regulated militia, as a reasoning, not a requirement, for the third and fourth segment being stated. And then the third segment, the right of the people to keep their arms segment, that one, it defines the topic or subject noun, which is the right of the whole thing, the right of the people to keep their arms. Um, And then the fourth segment is the conclusion, like what should be done with this topic subject noun that we're listing in this constitutional law is it shouldn't be infringed. Like that's what you
Mm-hmm.
should do with it. Um, and then like linguistically, like how people talk about well regulated is for some reason the people that use it that way like to say it means regulated by the government, which I'm pretty sure you know that that's not how it works.
Yep.
And I especially want to point out, even if you want to say it means regulated by the government, the word well as the adjective means like it should be a good kind of regulation, not like heavily, overly, or poorly
Mm-hmm.
regulated, right? So like
Yeah.
so that should just be kind of like clear to everybody, like don't go that route. And people like when I say that, some people even question like, well, what do you mean? Like how, like they can't even like argue about like what does that even mean? The like how do you what do you mean it's poorly regulated? How do you get there? And like what's a good one if that's what you're saying it is? And I think I can't remember if it was we talked about it or some other people talked about it, but that I talked about with somebody else. But it was basically kind of like the necessary stuff that you need um, for the the thing that the militia needs. So the militia
Mm-hmm.
has a task, right?
Yep.
The militia says being necessary to secure a free state. So its task is to secure a free state. And actually, that's the sorry, I want to backtrack a little bit. So the definition I want to give for well regulated that I'm pretty sure you know, but let me know if you disagree with it, is that in the 18th and 17th, 18th and 19th century, uh, the term well regulated pretty much went in proper working order to perform its intended task. A lot of people just
Mm-hmm.
say well trained or well armed, but it doesn't just pertain to the militia. So anything
Yeah.
that's well regulated means, like in general, that. Um, so the militia's task is to be well regulated for the security of a free state, not to secure a tyrannical state or some other type of tyrannical government. Um, and then the part of being necessary to secure that is the wording, the way that the reason why I say it's reasoning in an argument rather than a requirement is the wording like being or being necessary is kind of like the phrase when people say that being the case, and then they'll start saying like what they should do since they just discussed something was the case. So that's kind of how I interpret that or see that written as. And then, so a well-regulated militia is not a requirement for the right of the people to keep and bear arms existing or remaining unfringed. The right of the people to keep and bear arms exists prior to the Second Amendment being ratified. It is a God-given right, or for those who are non-believers, natural right or birthright.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third part should be pretty clear, but I'll go over it anyways. It mentions the right to keep and bear arms is specifically a right of the people. A lot of people will say it's a group right for the militia, but it specifically talks that it's for the people. The founding father quote that I mentioned before, which was that it belongs to people who are 16 to 60, and that directly contradicts the Militia Act that they wrote in 1719 too, which was the same founding fathers who wrote the Second Amendment, which is pretty important as opposed to like any of the other militia acts that came out in like the 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
That like they were all dead. So, but they pretty much said that the people who were the well-regulated militia were the men who are 18 to 45, and pretty much we don't take away the right to keep arms from people who are above the age of 45.
Mm-hmm.
So um, that's why it should be pretty. I thought it would be well known that it's a right for the people, not specifically the militia, but Democrats don't care.
Yeah.
uh, and then, so the other part is that we cannot even form a well regulated militia without people being well armed to begin with, because it's like, well, you could have a bunch of people armed with sticks and spears and bows and stuff, but that's not going to fight people with tanks and stuff, is it?
Yeah.
um, yeah, and then that's why pretty much it's imperative that people are not disarmed, and why the fourth uh, segment of shall not be infringed is pretty much written. So that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much it. Um, oh, and kind of like going off of the thing that I said earlier about like how people just say like what a well-regulated militia is, like they'll just say it's like well trained or well armed, and then stop there. I
Yeah.
actually have a more specific definition that requires five things,
All right.
and the five things are they first of all have to be free and independent, not government controlled. And the reason for that is like the colonists, right? They're fighting the British. The British was their government, so the British government didn't really tell the colonists like, "Hey, yeah, fight us, free yourself." Like they didn't
Mm-hmm.
sanction them to rebel. They told them not to do that. So yeah, the militia has to be free first and foremost. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, it's state commanded or state controlled. The state should command them." Like, no, not even the state should control them. That doesn't make any sense. And then the secondly, they have to be well manned. So that kind of goes off like the Militia Act of 1792. You have 18 to 45-year-olds, right? You want able-bodied people. You don't really want 5-year-old children because they can't really hold a gun very well. They're kind of weak. No handicapped people, no coma patients, no mentally ill people, right? So they gotta be well manned. And then they have to be well armed, modern military arms. They can't be outdated hunting bows and all that stuff. We kind of mentioned
Mm-hmm.
that. Even if we went into the future, right? Like think about Star Wars and whatever. Like
Yeah.
if they have like force fields that stop kinetic bullets or physical projectiles on contact and just disintegrate them, right? Even if we had belt fed machine guns, that wouldn't do us any good. So like we gotta up
Mm-hmm.
the the arms that we have to just to be on par with them, or maybe like you said, even superior, right?
Yep.
And then they also have to be well supplied. Having guns without bullets isn't very useful. Having Even if we had tanks and fighter jets, they're not very useful without any fuel or
Mm-hmm.
cannon ammunition or rockets. Soldiers aren't don't perform well if they're hungry. They got to have food rations. They got to
Yep.
have water rations. And wounded people need medical supplies, right? And then the fifth thing that they need is to be well trained, right? Even if you just gave a whole bunch of random civilians guns, ammo, and everything that they need to fight, like they gotta train. Um, like war zone is no it's no freaking picnic, right? Like
Nope.
there's no microwaves out there. People gotta learn how to cook out in the field.
Uh-huh.
So you can't just be like here's an MRE and then like not train them how to open or cook
Mm-hmm.
the MRE.
Yep.
So yeah. Do you have any thoughts about that? Is that a good definition for what a
Yeah.
well-regulated militia is, or is there like stuff missing?
No, that sounds good. Um,
Okay.
I have a friend. His name's Chris, and he's starting this thing called the American Militia Project. I don't know if I'd
Hmm.
mentioned that yet, uh,
Nope.
but he was on the last episode of the podcast, and we talked about just a lot of things on that. But at the end of it, we talked about his project, and I've been on two of his episodes now for his American Militia Project podcast. Um, but you can find him at militia underscore podcast, American Militia Project on X. He hasn't started the podcast yet, so I don't have a link to that, but he has recorded episodes. But
Oh, okay.
um,
If you when you do get it, could you send me the link on the Discord?
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Um, and he'd probably really like to talk to you. So
That'd
I
be
don't
cool.
know if sometime I might have you like both on my podcast or something and talk about that because you have a lot of the same views that he does, and he's looking for people like that.
Mhm. Okay.
Um, but yeah, I agree with you on the militia, and that should just also just be like that's just how Americans should live. So,
I think like as I said before, kind of like with the whole like Declaration of Independence thing, I think it should really be a lot more than just how Americans. I would wish
mm-hmm,
everybody on the planet had the same rights, or
mm-hmm,
with the kind of way that we kind of like the way that we phrase it is they do have those rights. It's just that their countries
yep,
unfortunately do not recognize them as such,
mm-hmm,
and violate those human those creator given rights.
yep,
Um, so even though they do technically have them, they just don't get to exercise them. They don't get to use them because they get punished for it.
yep.
Was there
That's the
anything
way I
was
look
there
at it.
anything else you want to was there anything else you want to mention about the Second Amendment? because that's pretty much all I wrote for my notes about it.
Okay. Uh, Not really, but I've been a huge fan of the Second Amendment. That was like the first thing I latched onto. I don't know why. I mean, I guess guns are just cool, especially when you're just a teenage boy. And I was like, oh yeah, you know. Um,
Oh yeah, I've so for background, like I've also been into firearms, or at least like guns, not like specifically real firearms,
mm-hmm,
since I was a kid, right? Like you get BB guns or the Nerf
mm-hmm,
dart guns and all that
yep,
stuff. Yeah. So I grew up with them. My parents or my uncle when I went, my cousin got a BB gun. I didn't get a BB gun unfortunately when I was growing up. Um, we were playing around with it, and my uncle would tell us like all the dangers, like hey, don't, and the kind of like the safety rules, like don't point that at people, like you don't intend to shoot and stuff.
mm-hmm,
It really hurts. Like just shoot it at like shoot the BBs at this towel. It'll get stuck in the towel, and then you can pull it out and reuse the BBs, all that stuff. So we already had the education kind of like sort of firearm education growing up when we were younger, and then after that, like when I was growing up and teenager and stuff, I started playing shooting games and stuff like that, and it just kind of like solidified the interest in firearms. I actually didn't start shooting real firearms until I was in my late 20s.
mm-hmm,
So yeah. And before that, though, before I ever picked up a real firearm, I did my own research.
yeah,
I probably did a lot more research than the average person. I looked about like the mechanics, how they work, the safeties, all that stuff. Like, and I mean like the every little tiny components and stuff. How to put firearms together if you ever broke it or
mm-hmm,
some part needed to be changed out, all that kind of stuff, like the maintenance things, right? So I was pretty into it from probably I think around my early 20s is when I started getting into like real firearms and learning stuff.
nice. Yeah, it's been lifelong for me. And I mean, they're just cool, you know. It's fun to shoot stuff. So,
I definitely know that feeling. I pretty much learned the three basic firearms, right? Like
mm-hmm,
pistols, uh, including like both semi-automatic and also revolvers.
yep,
I learned also how to shoot rifles, both like bolt action and semi-automatics, and
mm-hmm,
also learned how to shoot shotguns. I have yet to try lever action guns.
oh yeah. I
Um,
think I've shot one
but
before.
shotgun. Have you ever shot a shotgun before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a duck hunter.
Those are fun.
Mm-hmm.
They kick so much.
Yeah, 12 gauge, man. Get you a watermelon and some buckshot. That's that's a fun afternoon. Yeah, shotguns are fun. I love like skeet shooting and
I
duck
haven't done
hunting.
skeet shooting yet.
It's fun.
I haven't hunted any live. I haven't shot any live animals. I just
Yeah.
so far target practice. I need to find, I guess, a social group or something go out hunting with
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to go trekking in like a forest or a mountain region
Yeah.
like without anyone, right?
Yeah, it'd probably be nice to have a group of people if you're going your first time and everything, and on hunting on like public land.
Mm, one of the other, and if we don't have anything else, then we're talk about the Second Amendment stuff and guns.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to kind of follow up on the taxation stuff that we were talking about,
Oh
like
yeah.
on the other day. So we were talking about taxation for roads.
Mm-hmm.
That was the topic.
Yep.
Um, but we were kind of like expanding on that to kind of everything.
Yeah.
I mentioned like publicly funded hospitals and
Mm-hmm.
um, what else? Schools. Uh, I think those are the usual things people talk about when they mention public funding for
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Yeah. Police departments and fire departments.
Police departments and fire departments too.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, I don't think anyone really has any uh like I feel like there's not real much debate on like that the fire department or the police department should be a publicly funded thing. Do you think so?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Uh, and I feel like hospitals and schools should be more privatized than they are.
Mm-hmm.
I get why there is an appeal to make them publicly funded.
Yeah.
Um, but for the most part, I think that they should be privatized because they should kind of have to fight for their clientele.
Yeah.
Police should be just like firefighters. So they just service everybody who's in need, right? Like anybody
Mm-hmm.
criminal come out, like they come help, or anytime somebody's house is on fire, they come help. It's not just like it's a pay for service. Like come over here, my house is on fire. I'll pay you when you put the fire out. uh, but like definitely schools, like if you're not teaching my kid right, if they're
Mm-hmm.
doing like below average from the nation or something, like I should be able to put my kid at a like change a school and like get them a better education somewhere else. Um, and
Yep.
same with the hospital. It's just like, oh my doctor, like they were doing surgery, they dropped something in my freaking body during the surgery. It's like, nah, I want a different doctor. Screw that.
Mm-hmm.
Like shouldn't have to like be locked in with a doctor or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like that's the most important. Like comes to your health and stuff like that. Um, and I don't see a thing where you can like privatize the police. Like when it comes
Yeah.
to like privatizing like security, like
Yeah.
you could get a personal bodyguard, but I'm pretty sure that's really expensive, and the average person can't do that, which is why like the whole Second Amendment thing comes up, where it's just like
Mm-hmm.
everybody like, well, the next best thing is like get your own firearm then, and be your own
Yeah.
bodyguard, right? Like that's how you privatize it, not like pay someone else to privately bodyguard you, but you be like you're privatized.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess you could say then like for people like you could also privatize like schools. Just like, well, if nobody like in the business of education, you want to call it a business, uh, is doing what I think is the best job, and like you could do a better job as just like being a parent and teach them what they need to learn in life, then like sure, why not? People do that. The only kind of problem with that is, at least in modern era, is everyone is basically required to have a two-person household income to survive, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
At least for like I don't know the average or like bottom 50% of the country, they need that. Few people are fortunate enough in this time to have a single parent just work and the other person stay home and
Yeah.
maintain the household and raise kids and stuff. Uh, I think the country needs to re reevaluate how much they value certain things and
Yeah.
how much they value their own dollar. Not enough people boycott stuff and say that's not
Mm-hmm.
worth it. I'm just not paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Which basically means like, hey, I don't think the dollar's worth that much. I'll willingly go into debt for it. I'll just throw it all out. Like here you go. Like I don't care how much my dollar's worth. I just give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's I don't think that's a good thing for the Americans, people's bank accounts and wallets. Um, I don't see why they don't do it more. They clearly have the like I don't know if or maybe not organization, but they definitely like have the attitude to do it, but they don't do it for they don't really do it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
They'll boycott stores for like, oh, they're not supporting my political beliefs. I'm gonna
Yeah.
boycott them, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they're selling rainbow T-shirts, or like, oh my God, they're selling. What was it like? Budweiser was doing
Yeah.
the thing, or like anti-gun groups will or. like pro 2A people will get really mad at, there was like a gun safe company, I forget which one it was, but they basically gave the government
Oh yeah.
their access code. So they're
Yeah,
like,
that
we're
made
gonna
me mad.
boycott it. So so I'm like, people will boycott stuff, but they're not doing it for like
Yeah.
their financial health, which more people need to do since like I forget what is the rate of people who are in like credit card debt, not like bank debt for like
Uh
getting a loan for a house, but like credit card debt, like just spending too much and then they don't pay it off. I think it's like 60 or maybe like 70% of people keep being perpetually on credit card debt and like that they can't even pay off entirely.
yeah, I just saw a number like yesterday or the day before. It said like the percentage of people who are not only like in credit card debt but are just making monthly payments on that credit card debt, not like paying it off at the end of the month or paying it down in any way. They're just making their monthly payments, and it was like 30 some
Like a
percent.
minimum or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really bad. Like
Yeah.
they people can't be living like that. That's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really think a lot more people should do that. I had a discussion with a different person on X that they were basically asking. This was kind of like a cartoon about capitalism, and it was kind of displaying a race to the bottom where the two capitalist entrepreneurs who were selling lemonade, instead of trying to fight to make the best lemonade, they were fighting to make the lowest quality, cheaper lemonade. Like one of them's like, "Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
watered down my lemonade to make higher profits," and the other one's like, "I put piss in my lemonade
Yeah.
to like it And then they questioned, like the person that I was talking with questioned like, "Well, what's the alternative? How do you like if I only have X amount of dollars, how do I and the only lemonade I can afford is the cheap watered down lemonade." And they're like, we're not going to entertain the idea of like anybody putting pee in lemonade. So I was just like, okay, I did both. I entertained the idea of like there being piss in lemonade, and but it also applies to the watered down one. It's just like, um, so I was like, well, if you don't want to buy watered down lemonade, like the only thing you do is you like say, hey, no, watered down lemonade company, I will not buy your water,
Mm-hmm.
boycott them. And eventually they will either go out of business from being boycotted, or they will try to meet demand and say, oh, I'm sorry, we will stop putting so much water in our lemonade and make it more concentrated with lemon juice and sugar. Because that's only what capitalism can sell you. Capitalism can only sell people with what they demand,
Mm-hmm.
or what they're willing to buy. Even
Yeah.
if they demand better stuff, if they're still willing to buy lower quality stuff, that's what they're going to get.
Yep.
Uh, like no one in capitalism is like holding a gun to your head and saying, "Buy my product or I kill you." Like that's
Yeah.
not how capitalism works.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, so there's like three different options. You boycott them, or or which is all of them kind of involve sort of boycotting the like like the lemonade person. So it's just like you can either just have the alternative, just boycott them outright, and then just drink water, because water is a perfectly okay drink. Like I don't know why like people are complaining that
Mm-hmm.
they must drink lemonade. Like that doesn't make any sense. And then the second thing is like, well, there's just delayed gratification. How about you save more money? You just you work and then wait till your next paycheck comes in next week, and instead of having your lemonade every week, you have your lemonade every 2 or every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And if you can, if supposedly you can put in X dollars amount for lemonade, supposedly you surely can put in 2 times X money for like every 2 weeks to get the better lemonade
Yeah.
every 2 weeks. And then I also just mentioned, I was like, I don't even really want to entertain the idea that like you like all you can afford as a simple luxury is watered down lemonade. And if you could like if you could afford watered down lemonade as a simple luxury rather than only drinking water, which is the cheaper
Mm-hmm.
alternative,
Yeah.
uh, like I'm pretty sure you can also afford cheap luxuries
Oh.
somewhere else, and you could then theoretically just pull the money from those other cheap luxuries and put
Mm-hmm.
it into buying
Yes.
the high quality lemonade. If lemonade was really such a like uh, a priority for somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's like, but if you want to entertain the idea that there, because a lot of people are in debt and living monthly to monthly, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not so far fetched, right? It's like if you really had to say like that the only one small luxury you could afford in your life was this watered down lemonade, but you really wanted the high quality lemonade, then I was just like, okay, then you just go back to the other thing, which is just save up a little longer
Yeah.
than you could get it.
Yep.
So yeah, that was pretty much my thought on like economics for people. I'm like, just don't
Yeah.
steal the lemonade, because then you could get arrested for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind
And
of like
then
how
get
Americans live. Is a
yeah,
lot of people don't like to make sacrifices for
savings.
stuff,
Yep.
and that's how we end up in tons of credit card debt and just making your monthly payments because you
Yep.
didn't want to sacrifice and be like, well, I won't buy the high quality lemonade, or I will only buy it once a month instead of going through the whole thing in a week and having to buy it weekly.
Hmm.
I'll just go into credit card debt and buy that high quality lemonade every time I want it.
Hmm. And that was the thing. The person, when I made that argument, the person basically kind of snapped back with say like they tried to quote me, but they were like misrepresenting what I said, and
Mm-hmm.
was basically saying, so they're like, so what you're saying is basically like if you're poor, you're banned from drinking high quality lemonade. Like what? No, I didn't. What the hell? I didn't say that. Like if you're poor, save your money so you're not poor, so you can afford the lemonade.
Or get another job,
Like that,
and so you can afford your
yeah.
lemonade you need so bad. Like
And
if what you're
and
worried
that,
if you're poor, quote unquote, and what you're worried about is the type of lemonade you're drinking, I don't think you're that poor. You know?
yeah. Like they were trying to kind of make the point that they were just saying like people have a right to drink high quality lemonade. And
I
I'm like,
mean,
I don't.
technically not. So,
You have a right to liberty and the pursuit of happiness. That doesn't mean you have the right to be happy. You can go
mm-hmm,
pursue it. Like go chase your dream. Like go
exactly.
get, like fight for a job and then go and then you will be happy with more money. Like sure, but you can't just like demand being happy with like I'm not making money. I'm not doing anything to like offer society anything and trade for
Mm-hmm.
the lemonade. Like you're not,
Yeah.
because when you get to that point, right? When you say I'm owed something, I have a right to
Mm-hmm.
something, and it's especially something that requires the labor of another person.
Yep.
Like you owe me your lemonade. Like I can't make my own lemonade for some reason. Somebody else owes me like to make me lemonade. Like you're essentially getting on the like that's encroaching on slavery at
Yep.
that point. Like
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of already got rid of slavery,
Yeah.
even though technically we didn't. It
Mm-hmm.
still exists in the I think it was the third, I forget which amendment, it's like the 13th or the 14th one, that basically said we can still have slavery as long as it's a form of punishment in our prison system,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
which is pretty much why the country kept arresting a lot of black people to kind of keep slavery just like legally.
Yeah.
But then we got rid of like forced labor chain gangs and all that stuff in prisons like more or less recently,
Yeah, they pay them now, but it's like 10 cents an hour.
which is still pretty much like
I
wage
mean,
slavery,
I
right?
used to work in a prison. I mean, it's like enough for them to afford prison stuff, getting like honey
We,
buns and getting like
yeah,
Pepsis and stuff.
you can get a commissary cigarette, you could get like a bag of chips or something.
Yeah.
You can pay for your pay phone call now, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not a fair wage. It's not
No,
like yeah,
that's how you draw the line between slavery and
voluntary
yeah,
capitalist like work.
is that you're paying people a fair wage, which
Yeah.
I don't really know if the government should step in and say that there is a minimum wage, but it's someone
No,
somewhere.
we already had a conversation about minimum wage. Uh, so minimum wage, you can never basically. minimum wage never results in actually increasing money for somebody. And what I mean by that is like value of money.
Mm-hmm.
So you could tell them you're gonna we'll raise the minimum wage to $1 million per hour. Okay, so what? What happens to the price of food then?
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna just increase the price of food anyways. So it doesn't get you anywhere. And the problem is when people, let's say I was working a minimum wage job, which when I was in high school I was.
Yeah.
I saved that money in the bank. What happens when they're like, okay, you know what, we're gonna raise the minimum wage to at the time it was like $8. That dates me by the way, but whatever. So,
Mm-hmm.
so like minimum wage was $8, and they're like, okay, you know what, we're gonna raise the $15 an hour. What happens to all the money I saved in my bank? It basically gets cut in half
Yep.
because they're like the dollar now is half of what it was because we're giving the same burger flippers or whatever like server people we're giving is twice the much of what their labor is worth. But the value of the money didn't increase. They're just
Mm-hmm.
giving more for the value of the work.
Yeah.
And then if you do that with everybody, which is another thing, like we're like I'll talk about like universal income, right? Like have you ever heard of what universal income is?
Yeah, like basic universal income or whatever they
Yeah.
call it.
So some people like to talk about basic universal income as some kind of like progressive, amazing thing that'll solve poverty, but it really won't do anything because
Mm-hmm.
if everybody has some right like movie quote from The Incredibles: if everybody's special, nobody's special,
Yep.
right? Like if you have this $100 bill and everybody got $100 bill, like what do you why would anyone trade you anything for it? They're like, I got toilet paper, I'll trade you for this $100 bill. Like I already got $100 bill, who cares?
Yep.
Wipe my ass
Exactly.
with $100 bill. Why
Yeah.
do you care?
Yeah.
So like the whole point, like if anybody like basic economics, right? 101 economics, like supply and demand. If you artificially create a whole giant ton of supply and the demand stays the same,
Yep.
that object becomes like valueless. It's worthless. No one cares about it, right? If we
Mm-hmm.
had so much food that no one ever starved and it was just everywhere growing on the streets, right? Like instead of trees, we all just plant vegetable things everywhere. It's like the farmers would go out of business. They're like, we can't sell our crops to anybody.
Yeah.
Everyone already has food. What
Mm-hmm.
are you supposed to sell them?
Exactly.
So the only thing is like, okay, well, we'll grow crops that aren't food. We'll grow like cotton and make you T-shirts and whatever then,
Yeah.
like, right? Or we'll grow tobacco and that you can smoke and get high.
Mm-hmm.
So like people really have to think about like, okay, well, what are we like really valuing as society, and then we can change those. You could like change those values. Like people could value things differently, and that's why I kind of says just like value your dollar more and don't buy stuff you don't need, and then boycott those companies. And then like there's some stuff that are less um like they're not as perishable, right? So like if you boycott a certain food, the food will likely spoil in a matter of like days or
Mm-hmm.
weeks,
Yeah.
right? So what happens when the food is near spoiling? The supermarkets put it on clearance, they put it on discount, they put it like
Yep.
they red tag it or whatever. So same thing happens with pretty much everything else, right? Maybe not as dramatically or as quickly, but they do it eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's even go as far as like something that's not very like doesn't very decline very much, like the computer, let's say, right? That that'll last you like a good like even with the like failure rate of the intentional failure rate for electronics nowadays, it's still like what it'll last you like 4 or 5 years, a computer,
Yeah.
maybe even longer than that if you take care of it, like clean out the fan and all stuff and get all
Mm-hmm.
the dust out.
Yeah, you could
It'll
get like
last you quite
10
a while.
years before it even
But
like becomes obsolete or anything.
yeah, but the thing is, the tech companies are always innovating. They're always trying to push out the new thing. So
Mm-hmm.
anytime they're like, oh, next year or the every 2 years put out a new generation, if no one, if not many people bought the current generation phone by the time they're ready to release the new one, they like cut the price in half.
Yep.
They're like, hey, the phone that was like $1,200 is like $600 now.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, buy it. So if people really wanted, like, hey, yeah, like you don't have to get the new thing immediately and go broke and go in debt. Like, just you could get the thing that you want. Just wait like a year,
Yeah.
and not only will you save more money by that time, but the thing will also cost less now.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're like stacking money on money, where you're like, I paid half the price of this thing, and also I got like twice or three times as much money over the whole year that I've
Yeah.
been saving up for that thing. And I did that when I was going through high school and college. I was like, hey, I want a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of need it for classes a little bit. I need to contact my classmates every time we have a group project or something, uh, because I wasn't using Discord at the time.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I need to exchange phone numbers with somebody. So I had to get a cell phone. So I was just like, okay, well, I'll wait. And then I got the phone that I got was like a Galaxy S2 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, that was not the newest model. The new it's like the S6 or S7 at the time.
Yeah.
So I was just like, hey, I'm getting a five model 5 years behind, or five models behind, but it was functional. It did what I needed to do. It let me call people.
Yeah.
I didn't need a super fast processing smartphone for
Oh
anything. I
yeah.
could have got a flip phone for all I cared, but
Yeah.
it
A
was
lot of
nice to
people
also play
do that.
games.
They think, I'm going to start this new hobby, and they have to go buy the top of the line gear and this and that to do this, and then they give it up in a month. Anyways,
I was
then now
even
you have all that
yeah when
top dollar
even
stuff just sitting around.
even when I was doing some YouTube stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
channel here because of the whole discussion we just had, which is kind of like dangerous with the government and everything.
Yeah.
But like when I did that, I just whatever computer I had at the time, I just used it. I wasn't caring about like, oh, now that I start the YouTubing hobby, I gotta go and get the new computer. Like I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I kept buying new phones, I would wait until like my next phone was the like S6 or something,
Yeah.
and then I jumped to like the S9, and then the like the 20, I think. I think you just skipped 10 numbers and went from 10 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that's how I kind of stayed. Like that's how I ended up saving money,
Yeah.
and I was able to save up like tens of thousands of dollars over the few years that well, not few, the years that
Yeah.
I was working. Um, and I feel like a lot more people could do that if they. It sounds sad to be like, oh, like you couldn't afford the new jersey. Like, yeah, but it also sounds sad to be in poverty and to
Yeah.
be in debt and broke all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, we talked about this with like Jordan Peterson, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have to like choose how hard
Yeah.
things are and which kind of hard you want. Like you can
Yep.
choose to like not live the fancy life, and especially when I talked about like how my family was like immigrants, right? We
Yeah.
started with nothing,
Mm-hmm.
so like you could complain and bitch and moan that you don't have a flat screen TV and whatever in your house, and that you don't have the newest smartphone, but it's like, okay, well, do you want food on the table? Do you want
Yep.
your high quality lemonade, or do you want a smartphone gadget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and more so, like, do you want that down the line? Like, do you want to be able to afford a house down the line?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't think about this, but like once you own a house, right, more or less that's the time when like people can start being like gaining generational wealth. You
Yep.
pass the house down to your kids,
Mm-hmm.
you pass your car down to your kids. Anything that can last you a really long time, make it so they don't have to pay for it. That's how they can save up
Yeah.
money, because they didn't have to pay for it. I was lucky enough, even though I grew up in a family with a lot of kids, um, like I was still able to get a hand me down vehicle when I grew up.
Nice.
I still paid my parents a small amount of money for it, because my
Mm-hmm.
mom complained that like my dad was trying to give it to me,
Yeah.
like just give it away. But So I still paid them some amount, but at least like it's way cheaper than anything I
Oh
would
yeah.
have bought on the market, right? Used from anybody else. So like that's how uh, like you give your kids a better future than
Mm-hmm.
what you would have started with.
Exactly.
And people are like, oh, but it's so expensive to get a house. I'm like, well, um, it's expensive not getting a house. You'll be in debt for your whole life.
Yep.
A home loan you could eventually pay off maybe in like 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's just the mortgage. That's all. But you got this place that's got the equity eventually, like especially if people keep moving in, right? When like more people want to buy houses and then
Yep.
there's not that many houses to go around, your value is going to go up. So you're going to buy a house that's like maybe when my parents bought it, it's like 200,000 now worth over a million. 10x on your money. Like great, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you get out of your apartment? There's no investment there.
Nope.
You lost all your money over the years you were renting, and you got nothing to show for it, nothing to sell,
Mm-hmm.
or nothing to pass down. You can't pass down an apartment to your kids.
Nope.
Mm. We kind of went on a tangent and we never really kind of like explained
Mm-hmm.
or talked about like the taxation of roads. So you wanted to talk about like how you would privatize like road building,
Mm-hmm.
and I never really got that when you were discussing it on X. Could you like kind of explain that to me?
Okay. So, um, basically, the way I think of it is the government just happens to have a monopoly on building the roads. So most people kind of think that like it is only necessary, like the government can only do it. But I believe that if you privatize it in some way, there are people that are going to want to start businesses, and then like so people could do it themselves. They could just build it
Hmm.
themselves, or there's going to be people who do businesses. Just like there's people that mow their own lawns, and then or they'll just pay someone to do it because they don't want to do it themselves.
Hmm. I
And
do
then
want to kind of like uh word what you said differently, because you just said it just happens that the government has a monopoly. It didn't happen that way. Like made it that way through
mm-hmm,
laws. Like they're like, we're gonna punish anybody who starts trying to build laws on their own. Like we're gonna throw them in prison. They're not allowed to do the road work. Like it has to be sanctioned by us for some, like for whatever reason.
yeah,
Like only we're allowed to make plans of like where the roads go in the cities and like how it's built and stuff. Like we want full control of that. Like it didn't just fall in their laps that we decided that.
yeah. I mean,
But
they're
yeah,
they're the
so if you're saying if they kind of got rid of that, like private businesses would just like kind of pop up and then people could just that's one of the things like I don't know how like people would go about like contracting
yeah,
road
because I mean, it's
pavers to
already
be like,
basically done that way, but it's just the
uh-huh,
government holds the money. So I can see the problem of like, yes, to pave like a whole highway, that's going to take a lot of coordination, and that's going to take a
uh-huh,
lot of money. But the
yeah,
thing is, there's things like um, there's trucking companies, there's places
uh-huh,
like even beer companies that want to transport to places. There's delivery
mhm,
companies, Amazon, UPS, FedEx. They're all going to need the roads to do their business. So who's the
mhm,
people that are most likely to pay people to pave these roads? It would be them. So just like any other
yeah,
business.
but they would only really care about the road that like gets them the business, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they're like, okay, well, we just want the road that goes from our like whatever beer factory to the packaging factory, and from the packaging factory just to the supermarket or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, that's good enough. We're not going to pay for the roads for your houses to go to the school. We're not going to pay for the roads
Mm-hmm.
to like whatever, et cetera, right? So that's why I'm like, okay, well, we kind of need to just pool it like publicly and be like, yes, the roads for everybody, not just for your company thing,
Yeah.
right? That's why I was kind of like, I still don't get how you. where you privatize stuff, like how that would function in a way that it's builds the public roads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, for the most part, like a community will come together and do things. I just don't like the government being involved with things. And then I get the point that, like, also at that point, it's a private road and that company paid for it. So they have the right to say who can use it and it's no longer public.
Yep, and then
So,
they can like block it off and everything.
mm-hmm.
So they're like, we don't want any public cars on this. We wanted a super highway just for our transport trucks, so that there's like no crashing into our trucks. We save all our, we don't lose any of our products and stuff. Like we nobody gets to use this but us. That's the
Yeah.
reason why I don't want it to be privatized roads.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that I'm like, okay, we can have small government involved. We can like public roads, firefighting, police, and then everything else is more or less like
Yeah.
privatized healthcare. I also don't like like pretty much Medicare for all for the
Mm-hmm.
same
Yep.
purposes as why I don't like universal basic income.
Yep.
That it's just like, okay, well, if you say everybody gets access to medical care, but you don't hire any more nurses and you don't hire any more doctors and you don't hire any more
Mm-hmm.
like medical device manufacturing companies or pharmaceutical companies to make more drugs or herbs or whatever,
Yeah.
like like you're not going to be helping any more people by just saying walk into the
Yeah.
hospital. You're just going to have
Mm-hmm.
longer wait times. Like it
Yep.
doesn't do anything. And then like you're having more people put in money into like a publicly funded healthcare kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe if the government wasn't corrupt, they really could hire more doctors with all that money, like all the medical stuff with that stuff.
Yep.
But most of the time, they're just putting it in the pockets of the insurance companies because that's their job. They collect money and they gotta pay their own employees who push the paper and pencil and say like, oh, let me check if your claim meets our policy or whatever, and then if not, then we're gonna reject your claim. Like they gotta pay those people a salary or a
Mm-hmm.
wage. So when they collect money, it's like unless they're investing it in something and getting return on their investment to hand out more money, but usually like that's not really the case. They're just collecting money.
Yeah.
So like the money is being consumed somewhere and it's not being put into the added medical stuff. So it just ends up people getting a higher medical bill and plus the insurance premiums with no real value to
Mm-hmm.
their health care being given to them. So that's why I don't
Yeah.
like universal health care or whatever universal stuff. It makes it devalues the thing being
Yeah.
given.
Uh, and also, I think it de incentivizes people to take care of their health. It's just like, oh, it's free. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna smoke 2 packs of cigarettes instead of one. Someone's gonna pay for my cancer treatment. I
that
think.
and it's also the de-incentivization of like in um, inventions
Mm-hmm.
for like drugs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you have like competition of drug companies, they'll try
Yeah.
to find the better medicine that doesn't uh, has the least side effects, works the fastest, works the strongest, and
Yep.
also is the cheapest.
Yeah. And also, will de incentivize like the hospitals to be better than one another, like compete in some way, because everyone pays the same amount for this surgery. So
Mm.
obviously,
We got
in
to get more
in
patients.
most of those programs, you don't get to pick your doctor too. So you just
Yeah.
go to the one that's closest to you.
Mm,
I think most
I think
taxes
both
should
of
be
us
optional. I think that solves a lot of problems.
for. Hmm. But what taxes would you have that are just like absolutely mandatory? Would it be like just the like kind of what we said, like public roads, police, and
Well,
firefighters?
Well, I would say like the types of taxes, I would say like consumption taxes are kind of all right, but then like income taxes are not. But to answer your
What do you mean by
question,
consumption tax?
like
Like
when
using
you
it
buy a
as a
house, you pay the tax, but you don't pay a tax every year like it is now. When you buy
like a
non-essential
mortgage or a
items,
property tax?
do what? Would you
Like
say?
you mean like you bought the house but you don't pay a perpetual
Mm-hmm.
property tax,
Yeah,
land
you
tax?
you pay a tax when you buy the house, just like when you buy a car, you pay a tax, and then I mean, you most states you have to pay a tax every year to keep up your tag, but you
The
pay like a
registration.
big tax, and then that's it, instead of
Uh-huh.
these perpetual ones, and then you tax things that are non-essential. So don't tax groceries, but tax TVs, tax phones, consumption items that are just unnecessary that people don't need. So you can choose to pay that or not, and then
Hmm.
uh, yeah, that's about it. Just like consumption taxes and move away, and so that would include tariffs.
Hmm.
So
The thing
people,
is though, when if you're doing that, so uh, two things. We would have to drastically cut spending, which
yes,
I mean, I feel like we would do if we got rid of a lot of,
mm-hmm,
like we said, like insurance overhead companies and whatever,
mm-hmm,
pus- pushing pencils and whatever. So we would get rid of a lot of those. We would need to cut other spending, and we would also probably need to maybe increase the all the other remaining taxes that we have. So a
yeah,
consumption tax on a TV would have to be kind of high if we're not getting any taxes. Excuse me, if we're not getting any taxes from
mm-hmm,
selling groceries and stuff. Because how often do people buy TVs and stuff, right?
yeah,
We have a constant revenue stream to fund our roads and everything else.
yeah, and that's why I think it should also just be optional. Like you can submit a form or something where you can say, yes, I want the government to take X amount of money out of my paycheck every time I get paid that goes to the tax. It's optional,
Hmm.
and then you could even break it down as, and then I want this money to go to um, civil rights funds or environmental funds or blah blah blah. That way,
I think
people who
if
do
that
want to
was
pay
the
the
case, if
yeah,
I think if you're going that route, it's essentially like, well, if if you wanted, like, if you could already know where those groups were that you're trying to fund,
mm-hmm,
it's like why not just directly hand them the
exactly,
money and be like, here's a donation. Like, oh, I want to go fund my public police station, and I would like to give more than the whatever is to fund them. It's like I want to give them an extra $1,000 that I saved up. Here you go. Like I would like
yeah,
to make a big donation this year.
mm-hmm,
I mean, maybe that's not that big for just some people, but
yeah,
but it's like here, get like more ammunition to train your guys or whatever.
mm-hmm,
Another like bulletproof vest or something, save a life,
yeah.
protect your guys or whatever.
And I mean, people kind of already do that. They'll donate to fire departments or they'll donate to
Yeah,
police
they even do
departments.
fundraisers, right?
Yeah, and they'll do fundraisers. So, like that stuff already happens, and that's why I'm saying like we could get rid of the income tax. People would have more money, so then they'll be more likely to give to those things and fund them without I'm just saying remove the government from it. I'm not saying like you have to pay taxes at some point.
Uh huh. Yeah.
So, but just don't force it on people. Because if I'm struggling and I come here as an immigrant like your parents did, and you're struggling to just make it and get started, and you have to pay a tax, you're forced to, and that's more important than me feeding me and my family is to pay a tax to go do other things. And so I just feel like, once people are doing better, it's just kind of an obligation
Hmm.
at that point. But we shouldn't ever force people to do it because you don't know where they're at in their life and if they actually need that money more or not.
I feel like that system could work, but it would definitely take a giant change on our
Mm-hmm.
society. A
Yeah.
lot more people would have to be um, appreciative of their public services in order to do like go and donate.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, they also have to have an expendable income, which obviously getting rid of a bunch of taxes would put the money back in their pockets, which is would help with that. But yeah, like even if they did have a lot of money, they still need to have that desire in their heart to
Yeah.
give
Mm-hmm.
an appreciation uh, to those like the people like the firefighter groups or to
Yeah.
the police or to the road building crews. Be like, we really support what you guys are doing. It's a valuable service. We would like to uh, support you guys more than what just the government
Yeah.
does and pays you guys like the bare minimum to get
Mm-hmm.
operations running. Um, so yeah, and I think if right now our country doesn't have a lot of that. Um, we see a lot of people who are, which I would say rightfully so, a lot of people are angry with the police. I see a lot
Yeah.
of like corruption in the police
Mm-hmm.
too. So like yes, if the one police department is, not doing well, then I guess you could say in that sense it could
Yeah.
be kind of like privatized or like some kind of like competitive thing where like somebody opened up another police station, we'll go put a bid on them, and maybe they're not as corrupt or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then the previous police station loses out on the contract with the city or whatever. uh, but
Yeah.
I feel like that doesn't happen enough, like where change doesn't happen frequently
Mm-hmm.
enough, and that's why we get these swamps of people, and they're so hard to uproot because they dug in so long. Like you
Yeah.
don't have this kind of goes back to the whole like rebellion thing, like
Mm-hmm.
more frequently, like that I feel like that does need to happen more
Yeah.
often.
Because, like, basically, right now, the government is on universal basic income. They get a paycheck no matter what, no matter how good they're
Yeah, even
doing,
if they
how
do a
bad they're
bad
doing.
job. Yep.
So that's why I think moving towards consumption taxes and then making it optional to pay extra taxes in the form of an income tax or just however you want to do it, that puts more incentive on the government to do a good job, to get more money, to do more things.
And one of the things that I've mentioned before is that a lot of people will be like, oh, like the politicians are getting rich and they're corrupt and whatever this and that. And I will I would like to say that at least it is how I see it is. A lot of people don't really necessarily care that just the politicians are getting rich.
Mm-hmm.
They care specifically that they're getting rich and they're doing a bad job.
Yeah.
If they were doing such a good job providing a invaluable like a crazily valuable service, or what I'm saying, my words are getting mixed up. If they're doing such a good job creating so much value, making the country so rich
Mm-hmm.
that I don't think anyone would really have a problem
Yeah.
with politicians gaining off of that and also getting rich too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Like nobody has a problem that like really that uh, I don't know why I'm blanking on the creator of like the iPhone or Steve Jobs or whatever. Like I don't
Yeah.
think anyone had a problem with like Steve Jobs getting pretty rich.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have like a issue with Elon Musk for some reason, just probably because of his like political beliefs that are
Yeah.
like against theirs. But like I don't think that like when he was more of a leftist, I don't think people were really complaining either on the left or right that like, oh hey, this guy's getting rich off of selling these electric cars.
Yeah.
They're like even the people who are conservatives who are like laughing at the Cybertruck, and they're like, who wants an
Mm-hmm.
electric work truck when you got a like right
Yep.
like Ford F-150 or whatever.
Uh huh.
So like I don't think anyone's really mad that people are just simply getting rich. That's not the issue. Like
Yeah.
not in a capitalist country. That's not the issue. People are getting mad that people are getting rich while not offering them a valuable service or good in return.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're feeling cheated. That's what it really is.
Yep. Exactly.
And I think that's pretty accurate. Like the politicians are cheating the people. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first step to getting to no taxes is going to be cutting spending. And obviously, the
Hmm.
biggest thing, and it's probably going to be the hardest thing to convince people of, is we need to cut the military. Not completely. I'm talking at least in half. We need to pull out of all of these foreign conflicts and just having bases all over the world. I just think it's unnecessary. We need to pull it all back in, cut the military in half, and then what we do is we take all of this equipment that's sitting around, we sell it to the American people and pay down the debt.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things,
Right.
and then obviously there's just so many agencies like Doge is in there right now doing stuff, but we're gonna have to get a lot of things cut before we can cut taxes because it needs to happen. Like the funding is
The
needs to
problem
be
is,
there
so
right now.
so are you still in the position that you think that the government can be fixed like civilly, like going through this whole long process of like tearing down all of these organizations through the like legal process through Congress and stuff, actually willfully dismantling those organizations and everything, and cutting taxes? Do you think they'll actually do that?
I think it is possible. It'd just take a very long time, and that's the way our founding fathers set this up was for things to kind of have a process, and because then it removes emotion from the process. So you're not making decisions on anger or on something that just happened. That's how we got the Patriot Act. It was
Hmm.
made completely on emotion and what was going on in the country at the time. So I think there is a way to do it. It may take a little bit of armed rebellion to get things done, but I don't, that's just where I was kind of going to the extreme and almost kind of straw
Hmm.
manning your argument, where I'm saying like a civil war or a full on revolutionary war.
Hmm.
But now I understand, it's more like there needs to be some armed rebellions and not exactly getting like in a full shootout war with your capital, but at least just showing up and showing the presence. And
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that people are really scared of, though, is like they feel like even if they merely showed up with
mm-hmm,
arms, they think, oh, hey, the government's going to immediately shoot on me
yeah,
if I do that.
yeah,
And I mean, and that to me, in and of itself, is a big signal that like that means you should do it, because
mm-hmm,
then then you should return fire if they start
yeah,
doing that, because
exactly,
they're not respecting your First Amendment right to just assemble
yeah,
and show your displeasement with the government, and they're going to
mm-hmm,
like shoot you down for showing your displeasement like that. Like, no, they shouldn't be doing that. That's an action of a tyrannical government right
yep,
there.
exactly,
And that's not just like a, oh, your emotions and stuff, right? Like, no, like that's historically that's what you would label as a tyrannical government. That's
mm-hmm,
not like my opinion or what I don't know how many people would think, oh yeah, the government's just do that. That's fine what they're doing. Like they're going around gunning down civilians who are upset with it. Like,
yeah,
what? Where is that okay? So I don't think anybody has this like opinion that they should be doing that. Like I think we
yeah,
can all agree like that
mm-hmm,
wouldn't be a good thing if the government started doing that.
yeah,
And it is an erosion or in a bold face like violation of our constitutional rights. Like
yes,
specifically, I said like the First Amendment to, like some people might argue like, oh well, showing up with guns isn't a peaceable assembly like it says in the First Amendment. It's
hmm,
like, well, just because you show with arms doesn't mean
yeah.
you're shooting that like you're not coming in guns blazing.
If we
It's
come
like, hey,
in,
we're here with our guns.
yeah,
If you won't stop what you're doing, then there might be, but we're not here specifically to just kill you because we
mm-hmm,
don't like what policy was. Like we're giving
we're
you a chance to turn it around. We're giving you a
exactly,
chance to change your policy or step down or whatever it is.
mm-hmm,
We're not just bloodthirsty warmongers. Like we're here to actually get our policies changed.
exactly,
It might be a little more heavy-handed by showing up with firearms, but if that's what it's taking because
yeah,
the politicians aren't listening to votes on paper, they're not listening to unarmed rallies and whatever, then hey, like we gotta step up the ante, like show
mm-hmm,
up with guns, like just show you're serious. Like come
yeah,
on, like that's all it is.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be like and the government too. Like I said, like it maybe if they're just scared or something, like they might open fire. That happens with police sometimes. Like
mm-hmm,
they both the government and the people need to exercise prudence. They
yes,
need to be. not getting up in emotions, being scared. They need to show each other both we can be reasonable. We don't have to resort to killing, but we are heavily stressed. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, it's showing up as it's in a defensive way. This is just saying like, hey, we're here to do something, and if it goes south, we're ready for it. Just to let them know up
and
front.
that's
It's still like a
yeah,
negotiation tactic.
that's pretty much the same way like any other government would do it, and like any foreign
Mm-hmm.
government, right? And I
Yep.
see the people as they themselves are kind of government. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you think about like what a republic is, it's supposed to be a government by the people for the
Yep.
people. So if the people start governing themselves, which is how the republic is be, they should basically function like a government. So they're like, well, okay, well, how do governments usually negotiate on a national level or global level with other nations? And usually, sometimes that's how it is. They'll be like, hey, we're gonna do show of force. We're not gonna go launch bombs at you, but we're gonna do like military exercise. We'll like record the footage and then send it to your country. Be like, look, we launched a test nuke or in the ocean or something. Look how powerful it is. Like, don't actually mess with us.
Mm-hmm.
Or like they'll just be flying stuff around in our aerospace or something. They're not going to be shooting at anything, but they're just like, hey, we're here. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have capability to do stuff. If you throw a tariff trade war at us and make us go broke for some reason unfairly. Like that's just part of it.
Yep.
So I think it's fair for citizens to do something similar and be like, hey, we're here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be messed with. Uh, like we don't take this lightly, but still go peacefully, right?
Yes.
More or less,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Like to go back to what you were saying, like just because we show up with arms doesn't mean we're not showing up peaceably. We're
Hmm.
just armed. It's just like saying having a fire extinguisher in your house is expecting a fire to happen. It's like, no, it's there just in case. So,
Hmm. And I mentioned like other forms of just like preparedness too, like not just
mm-hmm.
fire extinguisher or fire harm, but like first aid kit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I have those like uh, freeze dried food ration things that last like 25 years, and
Yeah.
they're sealed in a flood-proof container, so that even if there's like water in the house, like it's not gonna like ruin your food and stuff. So all that kind of stuff that I think is really important for preparedness. That I think you would be like anybody would be a fool if they just disregarded. I understand not everybody can afford this stuff. Uh, like a firearm, even the
Mm-hmm.
cheapest one is like a few $100.
Yep.
Um, unless you get it at like some weird garage sale or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can go to like
Maybe you
gun
can find one
shows
for
and
like
maybe find
80.
deals.
Yeah. Or and I understand ammunition ain't cheap either, especially when
Mm-hmm.
if you're trying to train in a respectable
Oh
like
yeah.
every couple months or something, get it like making sure your skills are don't get rusty and all that stuff. You remember
Mm-hmm.
your fundamentals and everything. But a lot of people can train. At least how I started with firearms is I trained just dry firing,
Yeah.
like
Best type of
nonstop.
training. Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, and just doing like uh, what is it called? Like manipulation drill. So like you're manipulating the slide
Mm-hmm.
or the
Yeah.
charging handle or
Just like getting
whatever,
familiar with
making
it.
sure you can making sure you can like put your position in the firearm and
Yeah.
acquire the sights or the target all like on muscle memory,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that before you
Yes.
ever even put a live round in a
Yeah.
firearm. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. Or like if you're
and
planning
then some
to
people
concealed carry, just drawing
uh,
it from the holster and
holster
everything, just getting familiar with that process.
moving your garment out of the way, your shirt or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is,
Yes.
right? Um, or if people like carry in a bag or something, make sure you
Yeah.
open the zipper quickly. It was funny. I had one bag and then I like pulled the zipper really hard and just broke off the zipper.
Yeah.
So I was just like, yeah, not using that brand anymore. um, but that to be fair, that one wasn't even really that was that bag was not designed for the purpose of concealed carrying. It was
Yeah.
just a random, like any bag for just going out and keeping your wallet in and stuff. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
for putting a firearm in. So I guess they didn't design the zipper to be extra strong. Um, but yeah, it's good for people to definitely have all that preparedness stuff
Yeah.
um, down, and that's one of the sad things about like people being constantly in debt is like they don't
Mm-hmm.
really have the expendable income to like buy all that
Yeah.
what I consider as necessary
Mm-hmm.
because they're focusing on their their survival in a sense.
Yeah.
Um,
They're like a rat
but,
trapped in a cage. Like every day they have to get up and survive. They don't get to, they're not thinking about the future. They're thinking about today, or they're trying to get to Friday and then just get to the week, you know.
mhm. I do hope that people do like what I said before is basically just kind of expect or go through with the delayed gratification. I
Mm-hmm.
get people's point that they're saying that people deserve better lives, like people shouldn't have to live like this,
Yeah.
or the way that they are, and that's in a way it's true because like you believe in the right to pursue happiness and stuff. So like the thing is just like, well, okay, just go through the necessary things to build value in society so you can trade it for more money and whatever, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
get a really good job or a really good investment plan, eventually, make lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but a lot of people just spend their money and then don't really know how to invest or how to save, or they don't have that sense of delayed gratification. Uh, and I really think that that is one of the main things that people need to learn so that they could get all the necessary stuff that would help them be prepared if anything bad happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's the problem. One of the problems we have in America right now is people just aren't prepared for anything.
Hmm. I would like to continue talking, but it's already kind of late. We've been going about 2 hours now.
Yeah, not quite 2 hours. Just about though.
Mm,
So we were
I
kind of
did kind of
talking.
want.
Oh,
Hmm.
what do you got?
We did kind of touch, I guess, on abortion rights on X a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been talking about that a
or
lot because I'm looking for to have someone on. I think I told you that I'm trying to have someone
mhm,
on to talk about it
who
because
has an
I
opposing viewpoint, right?
yeah, because I literally just want to talk. I don't want to. I'm not trying to get you or call you out and say you're a horrible person or something. I just want to talk about the issue with someone that does not have the same viewpoint as
Mm. I think abortion isn't really a right because,
me. Mm-mm.
first of all, it's not really mentioned in the Constitution as one, um, and also it deals with another human being,
Yep.
and just like slavery, like, and well, that's the touchy part, right? A lot of people are
Yeah.
like, no, it's not a human yet because it's not
Mm-hmm.
born,
Yep.
and they'll be like, well, it's a human fetus, but it's not like a human.
Yeah.
And I
They
was just
say
like, okay, well,
they'll
like, yeah, good.
they'll admit that it's like a human fetus or a human zygote, but they'll say it doesn't get its personhood until it's born.
Uh huh.
And a person is what has rights, not a human. So that's just a huge distinction right there. So who do we define as a person, you know? But it's a whole
I
larger
think
issue, I think
that was
sometimes.
the kind of like really sticky part, right? Like you get like philosophers like Plato, I think it was, and they're like
Mhm.
they got like when they try to define it, they're like, here's a plucked naked chicken, here's man, like it has a
Mhm.
bipedal two-armed thing and a head, and it has no feathers or fur, right?
Yep.
So it's like how to define it's kind of a weird thing. It's just like, well, we know it's like we can all talk amongst each other. It's like, well, animals seem to communicate with each other too, so like
Yeah.
that's not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you differentiate human from every other animal? It's like I don't know, but most of the time when we're speaking, like most like you'll know like okay we know what you're talking about when you say human. Right? We have
Mm-hmm.
an image in our head, or I don't know. Some people don't have they can't visualize stuff in their head,
Yeah.
but like we have a concept of it.
Yeah.
Um, and same thing with like men and women. Like we know that
Mm-hmm.
an adult female chicken is not a woman, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a hen. We call that a hen.
Mm-hmm.
And then an adult male chicken is a rooster. We don't call that a man. So
Mm-hmm.
we know what a man is. It's an adult male human, and then a woman is an adult female human. And then like a lot of people will try to go on the whole like there's like XX, XY chromosomes, and then the LGBT community will be like, oh, but there's like XXY or there's like YYX and like these
Mm-hmm.
other things. And we're like, okay, but those are kind of like mutations of the
Yeah.
chromosomes, and they're not really like, I mean, I guess you, if you really could categorize them, but it doesn't really like, they don't really appear or come out as like a third or fourth gender or sex.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
still pretty much mostly appear like male, or they still mostly appear as
Yeah.
female. You might get the very rare hermaphrodite where it's completely like split in half. Like you could honestly go either way. But
Mm-hmm.
then I'm like, okay, well we already have a word for that. You're not a
Exactly.
hermaphrodite. So it's just like, well, where's the confusion where we need to like get this other definition of like trans man or trans woman? Like I don't understand that. And then when people are saying like, oh, we have a man who's acting very feminine, or we have a woman who's acting very masculine, it's like, well, we kind of already had terms for those too. We had for the man, we had like a femboy or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, like right. And for women, we had like, oh, they're like a tomboy or something,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't understand this trans ideology where they're kind of like really believing they're the opposite gender.
Mm-hmm.
And when it really came to that, where it's just like a mental thing, it's just like that was just a mental disorder. Like, but they're still the sex or gender that they were before.
Yeah.
Like, like
Mm-hmm.
just because they thought it doesn't mean they are it. It's like there's some people that think they're a cat or a dog, and like, okay, well, I'm
Exactly.
not gonna go take them to the vet and have them castrated
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, like just because they think they're a cat or a dog, like, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I don't really like get like these definitions or these like ideologies about like
Mm-hmm.
what people are trying to redefine men and women and trans
Yeah.
stuff is.
It's
Doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't even think they really like agree with themselves either. Like I'll talk with some LGBTQ people who are either both the individual themselves, like self-proclaim themselves as trans, or people who are just supporting the ideology, even if they're like a cisgendered, like straight
yeah.
person. And they'll give different definitions that don't match up with each other. Like some people will be like, oh, well, it's just somebody who identifies that way, or it's somebody who like they'll say it's like the act, like how they perform or how they try to make themselves appear to the rest of society. And I'm like, well, we have cross dressers. Are they transgender? And they're like, no, no, like they're fully aware that they're the gender they are, the real gender, like the sex that they are. They'll be like, oh, this is a man cross dressing as a woman. Like they don't believe they're a woman. Um, so
Uh,
like, and then the other part about it, when people say that it's for women, like men, trans women are women.
mm-hmm.
They usually just say that for men. I don't know why. Like men
Yeah.
who are transitioning, they don't say in the reverse. They don't really like try to help women transition to men
Mm-hmm.
as much. I find they're more defensive about the men turning into women, which is to me is a bit odd. Uh, like because the men are going into their safe spaces, they're going into
Exactly.
their bathrooms, their locker rooms in the gym, in the like all those places. Like I don't know why you're defending that, but okay.
Yeah, that's when I fully
And then
flipped, was when they started doing that. I was like, nope, like you're not doing that.
and I also find it kind of almost disrespectful, or maybe disrespectful really is the right word though, to biological women to say
Yeah.
that hey, a man can just go in a dress and pretend like or act like
Mm-hmm.
they're a woman, and that is womanhood. And like that sounds really sad that you would say, well, womanhood is just an act.
Yep.
It's not. It has nothing to do with like your actual identity of like who you are physically as a person, who you are. Um, it's kind of like, well, what about like someone who like puts on blackface? Is being African, is
Yep.
that just like an identity? I'm like, no, I don't think so. Like you can't just put on blackface and be African.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like same thing with any other race. You can't just put on a sombrero and a poncho and be like I'm Mexican, or you can't just put on a rice patty hat and a silk like outfit and be like I'm Chinese or Vietnamese. Like no, you
Yeah.
can't do that. Um, and so like a guy can't just shave off his mustache, put on a long wig, and put on a dress and be like I'm a woman. Like no, you can't just do
Nope.
that. Like that's not how that works.
Mm-mm.
And they're like, why not? Like it's just gender is just a social concept. I'm like, if people want to go down the route that's like we make up everything as a human species, we make up our own human language, but at some point, like everyone on human Earth kind of like agrees and acknowledges what a like a human is,
Mm-hmm.
even if you use a different language. I don't know what the word for human is in other languages, but like if they call it that, it's not like they're calling it a non-human thing. It's just the word in a different language, but it still means human. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing for men and women. It's like that's a man. That's a manos like hand. But you get my point. It's like you can call it whatever you want, but the physical thing, the concept of what you're talking about is the same. You don't just change the definition. Like the concept
Mm-hmm.
is like the essence of the thing is like that's what it is. And changing the definition doesn't really help. It just confuses people more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, the feminization of the world or society, I mean, is kind of weird. And a lot of people might say that it's the way that like China may be trying to take us over is by rotting us from the inside out, feminizing the men so they can't fight. They're not going to live on their own and do things for themselves.
I don't think it's just China. I think a large
Mm-hmm.
portion of the world does not like America, and
No.
kind of for fair, like good reason. Like we
Mm-hmm.
built our military outposts all over the globe. Like we messed with a lot of countries' economies and like destabilized a lot of their governments. Like okay, yeah, some people hate us. Like it's fair point. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
surprised that other countries want to take down the U.S. And a lot of people also just want to, even if they don't have any direct animosity because we did anything to them particularly. Some people like China or Russia, no, not people, some governments or
Yeah.
some countries, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're pretty close. They're like second or third top power of the world, right? At least in terms of like military strength or like economic strength.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to be like, hey, I just want to be number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to take down someone. I want to take down the number one a peg,
Yep.
so I could be number one. Like that. That's also just like a pretty kind of valid reason. Like some people are, they just want to be there. So
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that they would do so more civilly and just through their own hard work of like we're
Yeah.
producing stuff in our country, we're going to be better rather than hey we're
Mm-hmm.
start a war or we're gonna like go invade your country and put in a bunch of like mind manipulation tactics, make everybody in your country hate themselves or hate their own country,
Yep.
and make them split up and divide in a civil war or whatever that way. I would hope they would be more above the board than that, but hey, they do what they do, and we don't get a say in their country because we're not citizens over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people would say that would be the way to do it. That the way America is set up, the way that we are all armed, that a real invasion wouldn't work. So the best way to do it would be to rot it from the inside out and cause a civil war. And then while everything's chaotic, then you swoop in.
I still wonder if I don't know if made 10 to 20% of the country died off in a civil war, and the remaining 80 or so percent, maybe even 75% of the country left over, was then okay, we've either reached a mutual agreement or we've reached a point where the other side can no longer fight anymore because we've killed too many of your soldiers or whatever, and now you're kind of forced to listen to the remaining side, kind of like how the Civil War happened with the slavery and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would the remaining able forces of the country be able to still stop a fresh Chinese and maybe even possible Russian alliance, both attacking the remainder of America left? I question. I wonder if that would be
Mm-hmm.
a possibility,
Yeah.
which would make me more inclined to if we would survive the Civil War and a combined attack with them, I would be like, okay, yeah, we should that's fine. We should then still have a Civil War
Mm-hmm.
if that's what's needed to fix our
Yeah.
country.
Mm-hmm.
I would not like to have a Civil War if we were just going to merely be taken over by a foreign country. I'd rather at least
Yeah.
keep it within our own country's power, at least.
Yeah.
That is to say, if you really believe that our country's power is not already kind of corrupt and influenced in any way by foreign
Mm-hmm.
entities,
Yeah.
which I'm still under I am kind of under uh, the the thought process that it is not under our control.
Yeah. I think Israel influences a lot of things, and there's some politician, a congressman, and he was known to have a relationship with a Chinese lady that was found out to be a spy. So I don't remember that guy's name or anything about that, but I know that that happened. He was in a full-on relationship with a Chinese spy, so that's I mean, that is happening.
It kind of makes me think about when they had was it TikTok creator on they're interviewing them in Congress or something. Are you from China? Do you have any connections with China? They're like, I'm Singaporean.
Yeah, I remember that. It was pretty funny. I just think that there's still a way for the people to take it back. Maybe without. I think that right now a majority of our problem is that there's more old people, which I want to label that as like people who are 60 years or older, than there are people that are 0 to 60. So most of our representation comes from this older generation that grew up in a completely different America than we did.
Hmm.
And I think the younger generation, I think a lot of people within my generation really had to come up through like the worst of the outcomes of recent government things, acts and bills and everything. And they really are. trying to make their way into the government to try and fix things.
I kind of hope that Gen Alpha doesn't like enter like politics and then starts making everything like skibbity or whatever.
Yeah. I think it's still a little bit for them to get in. I just now got to the age where I realized, like, oh, I could be a state congressman.
Mhm.
I couldn't run for my governor yet, but I could become like a state senator or a state house representative. Uh,
I think schools need to do a better job of teaching kids to
mm-hmm.
be more like leadership or more uh,
Yes.
self what's the word I'm thinking of self like not self I guess self governing but self organizing,
Mm-hmm.
um, sort of like have a class president, have them do like tasks and stuff. I remember when I was in just even in elementary school, we had like during Thanksgiving, we would all have like tasks and we would all cook and stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with like parent supervision, right?
Yeah.
But we would get kind of like assigned tasks, or we would assign ourselves tasks in little groups and try to like get a shared goal completed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that a lot of groups do that anymore. It's like a lot of kids just get put in like assigned groups based on the teacher just assigns them. It's not really like they get to pick their groups
Mm-hmm.
or pick what they're doing,
Yeah.
and they don't get a lot of agency and a lot of just experience uh,
Mm-hmm.
to to like kind of give them exposure to kind of like politics at an early age,
Yeah.
in a in like an indirect way, like that they're showing like, okay, this is how you
Mm-hmm.
organize this, groups work together, this is how like a government or society functions, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in high school, we had like class government, but it didn't really mean much. It's not like you really did much. Um, Everyone wanted me to be the class president, but I respectfully declined, and they picked someone else. I was like, it's not much of a title or anything, but I just didn't want to do it. I
What
never.
was the role in your class for class president? Like, what did they do?
Um, I mean, I think just like if there was something that was going to be organized, like once by the time we became seniors, like organizing the class graduation trip, that would be something that our class government would do for us. But
Mm.
other than that, like I don't even think they did much of anything. And then they have a responsibility after school. Those are the people that are supposed to like keep up with everyone else to organize the 10-year reunions or 15-year reunions, blah blah.
Hmm. When I was in elementary school, our class president was in charge of like anytime we had kind of like writing assignments, they
Mm-hmm.
would be the ones to go and like collect the notebooks from
Mm-hmm.
the people, or they would assign like four or five other students to help with that. So kind of like tell them like, oh hey, like you can delegate and do stuff, uh, and try to like organize like a better way to just than just getting the teacher to collect all the stuff.
Yeah.
And it would be up to them how to like uh like choose the method that they wanted to. It wasn't just the teacher like, hey, go pick four students. They'd be like, how would you like they would ask them like, okay, well, how did you do this? Yeah, like what you're trying to get done, and then like they're given kind of free reign, like more or less
Mm-hmm.
what they were gonna do. Some people would just elect to kind of just like, well, I'll just go collect everything myself. It's perfectly fine. There's only like 20 other students. And then some people are like, oh, I get my best friend to help me together, get 10, 10 notebooks each or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people were like, well, everybody in the row send it like down to the left, and then I'll come by and kind of like a teacher does, and then collect all the stacks, like the 5 stacks at the end of the row or whatever, right? So yeah, they all kind of had their own thing, and it was interesting. Like everybody got more or less, not everybody in the class got to be class president. It was like we had maybe like a quarter of the class ended
Yeah.
up getting like elected at one point. Some people had extra terms in the school year,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah.
Yeah, the way we did it, it was like just our freshman year of high school. We elected a class government, and then they were the class government until we graduated. Like we didn't have elections every year. The only time we would like re-elect someone is if like someone moved or whatever happened.
When
Then
you
we
say
had to fill
class,
that
do you mean
spot.
like the whole like class year that of the graduation, or
Yeah.
do you
Mm-hmm.
mean like of the classroom?
Yeah. Like,
Okay.
well, I came from a very small school, so
Hmm.
we only had 30 people in my class. So it was just the whole freshman class, and then obviously move up and they were in
Okay.
the sophomore class. And but
So that's kind of what I was thinking about, like where they would have like the like treasury or something, and then they would kind of
mm-hmm.
figure out like the student treasury would try to figure out like, okay, how do we do fundraisers or
Yeah,
something,
yeah, the treasury
and then
would
they
do
would have
stuff
a
like that.
budget. Then they would have a budget for like, okay, we're having a school dance coming up. Like, we're gonna fund the school dance with selling tickets or like food
Mm-hmm.
raiser or whatever fundraiser kind of thing. And then they're like, okay, here's our budget. Like, go buy all the decorations and whatever. And yeah,
Yeah.
so I feel like I'm not sure if schools are still doing that. Like, I feel like that's an important thing that they should be
Mm-hmm.
doing if they're not doing
Yeah.
that anymore.
It should definitely be a part of like government class, history class, blah blah blah.
Mhm. But even
Or,
on a smaller scale,
mm-hmm.
like I was saying, like our classroom president would be the one that's like, oh, they're collecting all the like notebooks and stuff, or getting other students to help with that and delegating stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like they need that on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Um, I think uh, like Japan does a pretty good job of that.
Hmm.
Like I don't know if you've ever seen like how they structure their classrooms and stuff,
No.
but usually they'll be like, oh, everybody has chores, kind
Hmm.
of like they. I think they still have janitors, but they'll kind of like have the kids clean up the classrooms. Like
Yeah.
they make sure that the kids have respect for their own environment. Be like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if you dirty something, like you have to clean it.
Yep.
Like this is your space, this is your desk. Like you got to make sure it's clean. Uh, like you might not own the desk, but you're sitting here all the time and
Mm-hmm.
you're using it,
Yeah.
so
It's
like
provided
you
for you.
should take care of it too. Yeah. So like I feel like a lot of people in America don't have that, and I think as society, like we should kind of like ingrain that. And that's one of the nice
Yeah.
things about like America is like you can just we don't really sort of have our own thing. We're all immigrants and trying like, well, what's the best thing we can import from a culture or whatever, and we're just trying to make a mega society, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it was nice talking to you, RJ or G. uh,
Yeah.
I think we're gonna wind this down here. Uh, so yeah, it was a good talk about the Second Amendment, and then we touched taxes, um, and then talked about abortion for a little bit about education. We talked about the militia for a little bit too, which was
Mhm.
nice. So, any other comments or anything you might want to bring up before we end it?
uh I do want to thank you for inviting me on the podcast. This was my first podcast. I feel like I did a pretty decent job.
Yeah, you did pretty good.
um, I hope we could have went more in depth later, but
Mm-hmm.
time. But I did like the talk on the taxation and stuff, and
Yeah.
your kind of opinion about some of the stuff was interesting, and I was glad to hear your um, kind of like extrapolation
Mm-hmm.
on how kind of privatized roads would go, I guess.
Yeah.
Even
We
though
could
we kind of
discuss
like
that more
flushed that
sometime.
out
Mm-hmm.
and still said it should be more or less public anyways, just
Yeah.
less heavy handed by the government, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure where we would go really expanding on anything about abortion rights.
Yeah.
I get like we could have, but it's like we both pretty much agree anyways.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I I don't know if you have any exceptions on that. Maybe we could talk about that later if there are any exceptions for abortion. I believe there should be some exceptions, specifically like ones that are like the mother's life is in danger, kind of like how self defense laws apply.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would also we kind of talked about transgender
Yeah.
ideology
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so maybe next time, if we are going to do another podcast,
Yeah.
I would
I'd love to have you
maybe
back.
talk about more taxation or more on abortion. We
Mm-hmm.
could go deeper into that. But those are the I feel like five. I think that's pretty much like five topics: Second Amendment, taxation, abortion, and trans ideal. Four things.
Mm-hmm.
Those are usually the things I like talking about because those
Nice.
I feel like those are the most controversial.
Yeah.
Um, but if you have any other topics that you want to bring up that interest you or you just want to talk about, like I'd pretty much go into it. But I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
knowledgeable I would be on those other topics since those
Yeah.
are things I usually end up discussing with people on
Mm-hmm.
X or anywhere else. So
All
so
right.
yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate the pushback on the taxation because it's still like a new idea for me because like
Hmm.
I'm just like we need to like the idea should be to have the least amount of tax possible. We shouldn't just be
Hmm.
increasing taxes and adding taxes willy-nilly. We should be thinking what is necessary. So I like the pushback on it so I can really it helps me formulate the idea better. So
Hmm.
we'll definitely
Well,
talk
I'm glad
again.
I could get your brain moving a bit.
Yeah.
um, But yeah, so anyways, again, thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. It was a great experience for
Yep.
myself. I hope it was really good for you,
Yes. It was a good conversation.
beyond just the little pushback. Um, but it was a very pleasant one, to
Mm-hmm.
say the least. Normally, going on X, it's not too pleasant
Yeah.
all the time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Um, So I want to thank you for that, for the
Yes.
pleasant conversation
You're
we
welcome.
had.
And thank you.
Quite productive, and I look forward to our next conversation if you would have me again.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. See you next time.